Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to bring you a recap of this week's episode of SmackDown, which took place on November 21st, 2025, in Denver, Colorado. After a recap of ending the last Raw, which all but confirmed the five men competing on each side for War Games, we see Paul, Logan, Braun, and Bronson making their way, or actually already in the ring, and in only a way that Paul Heyman can do, he introduces all three and proceeds to hand the mic over to Logan Paul. As he is about to speak, he gets interrupted by the Usos, who state they didn't come alone. But upon Cody's entrance music hitting, he is nowhere to be seen. Then we end up seeing his bus, and we see Drew McIntyre walking out of the bus and a bloodied up Cody as the Usos scurry on back to Cody's bus to ask what happened, even though they probably saw that on the Jumbotron as well. But the image of Cody, I don't know why that made me laugh, but it made me laugh pretty hard. The way he's sitting in the bus, whatever reason, that's the picture they went with, and I don't know, it's pretty comical, but a pretty good segment here, I think. Kind of ramping up the intensity for War Games, and yeah, Drew clearly not done with Cody, and Cody has a bit of a few things to say later on in the show as well. We then get into our first match of the night, which is Ilya's U.S. Open Challenge once again, this time answered by J.D. McDonough. And another banger here. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise. Week in, week out, Ilya puts on bangers after bangers, as his friend Seamus would probably say. And please don't mistake my lack of words here for not being impressed. It's just every week you think he can't up the ante, and he does. Obviously, JD McDonough is no slouch, and in my opinion, one of the fastest rising stars in WWE as well, if not kind of already there from an in-ring standpoint. And this is just an incredible match, and I would argue maybe the best one of his Open Challenge so far. But they're all good, so the distance between them is so small. But just another instance of a great match. Getting into the next match, we have the second to last round, first match of the Last Time Is Now tournament. And although predictable, this was massively entertaining. And Carmelo getting the win is huge for him. And I think, considering how recent his face turn was, the crowd was really behind him. And I think it's kind of twofold. And maybe WWE knew this and he did a good job of doing so. But obviously, we don't want to see someone from the division win. So not only did we not see someone from the division win, we saw the Usos and Cody kind of aid Carmelo in getting that win. So not only did the division not win, that's a big plus. But then we also see Carmelo, who, since being drafted number one, the last time we had a draft, has been vastly underutilized. And I think a lot of the people, especially the NXT faithful, know he's capable of much, much more. And I felt like, maybe I'm overreacting a bit, but I felt like maybe this could be the start of that big push. Now, I'm not sure I'm saying he's going to win this tournament, but if he would, I wouldn't be mad at it. I actually would love that. But I feel like this is kind of a little snippet of WWE seeing how over this man really could be. But yeah, this was a ton of fun. Obviously, like I said, maybe a bit predictable with everyone coming down to take out the rest of the division. And then afterwards, Cody cutting, I would argue, one of his best promos of this current run. Just goes to town on all of the members and saying that he thought he was done with Drew, but now he's not. So continuing to kind of further ramp up that intensity for War Games. KP, a pretty massive first half to SmackDown here. Curious to get your thoughts on that opening promo, as well as the Ilya Open Challenge match with JD and the Carmelo and Bronson Reed match.
Yeah, I think probably you'd say an expected way to kick things off. The Vision obviously, forming that five-man squad for War Games on Monday, and we then see obviously Drew McIntyre laying out Cody in the truck. Yeah, it sort of brings that intensity that I think sort of coincides with War Games, and Drew, I think, seemingly just trying to separate, his sort of feud with Cody from maybe the War Games setup at the moment. I think they're sort of like continuing that, which is quite nice to see. because obviously we thought maybe that Drew and Cody were done. It seemingly was playing out to be, well, obviously with the suspension, but obviously things got turned around pretty quickly, and obviously we're still moving things along now. And yeah, with Cody then saying later on that he's not done with Drew McIntyre yet, it does sort of make things feel like we will get another sort of chapter to that. So that was quite nice there. I quite liked that particular part. But then yeah, with just Heyman coming out and basically just highlighting each and every single person who's going to get dominated on the other team at War Games, then I think it's pretty much the expected sort of a way to start things off here. But yeah, not too bad at all, and just like seeing the little progression bits here and there. With the Ilya Dragunov and McDonough match, yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this one. Like you said, it was extremely good. Just two men just absolutely going crazy and just having a really good back and forth matchup. Lots of history between these guys going back to NXT UK and obviously in NXT as well. So yeah, they definitely had their previous past meetings in other sort of times, I guess you could say. And yeah, I thought it was probably up there with the best of them. To be fair, it was really really fun. Ilya Dragunov winning is no surprise, makes sense. Expected result, and it's the right call. But yeah, it was nice to see something a little bit different. Obviously, we've seen Ilya with the whole DIY and Fraxium scene over the last few weeks. So this is someone very, very different from that. And yeah, just I guess sticking to these tag team wrestlers, because obviously we can take Judgment Day's JD McDonough, recent tag team champion over on Raw with Finn Balor. So it does tend to be the Ilya Dragunov at the moment is sort of like a helping the tag team guys sort of like a bolster up a little bit of their credit via these matches. So yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying this run. Still having a great time watching it. And this was a brilliant next addition to this Open Challenge run. And then, yeah, speaking of brilliant, I was hoping that Carmelo Hayes would somehow find a way to get the victory here. And you mentioned, maybe perhaps a little bit predictable with everybody coming on down and, having their sort of say in the contest and helping out here and there. And yeah, obviously it was Cody Rhodes in the end that would deliver that crossroads, send Bronson into the ring. I think I would have quite liked to have seen Melo, actually pin Bronson Reed. I don't think it would have done any harm. He took up crossroads from the WWE champion, so I wouldn't have thought that would have been a particularly bad thing for Bronson Reed especially. But yeah, the count out victory, I mean, I guess it's just a way of, just showing the strengths of Bronson Reed, and you have to keep him down for the count of 10 rather than pinning him. So I guess there isn't really a bad thing to say about that, but just the purist inside just wants to see a pinfall finish. Me being a little bit too picky there, a little bit too critical. But yeah, absolutely elated for Carmelo Hayes. As you mentioned, he deserves some bigger and better opportunities. So thankfully he got this one, and he's in that next round. So he goes 1-on-1 with Gunter in the next contest, which is going to be quite interesting for sure. That's a very difficult match for Carmelo. He's got a pretty rough draw so far. But yeah, everything coming on out at the end, and Cody delivering, like you said, actually was a pretty decent promo. I don't get to say that about Cody very often. This one actually had some sort of like difference to the ones we've heard recently. It just felt a little bit more original than what we've had in the past. So yeah, happy with that one. Glad to see something that I could at least sort of turn into a positive there with Cody in a promo point. And yeah, it does sort of bring a bit more hype to the War Games matchup for sure. So honestly, for the first half, not too bad at all. Two pretty good matches. And then, yeah, just that little bit of a hellacious start there, especially with Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, nonstop action, and you do make a good point about Carmelo. Definitely has a bad draw so far in the tournament. Speaking of bad draws, in the last time is now tournament. He also get an announcement, actually announced earlier in the day on social media, that Sheamus was injured. I don't know if that's kayfabe or not yet, but he will be replaced. So the opponent for LA Knight is yet again a mystery, which kind of makes you think, wonder if it is a legitimate injury or not. I'm sure it is, but it is coincidental, I guess, at best, that LA Knight has two surprise opponents in this tournament. So yet another bit of intrigue, but we will get into that on another episode of If We're Being Honest quite soon. So with that, we'll get into the second half of SmackDown, which kicks off with yet another match, and just we only had three matches on SmackDown tonight, but every single one of them delivered. And this one is no exception. And so with this one, excuse me, four matches. Sorry, Fraxium and DIY providing kind of their back and forth they've been having, and this is just again with the two teams involved here. You would expect a good match, and we got just that. What was interesting, and I think more so the talking point for this one, was Fraxium. Specifically, Axiom towards the end gets his mask ripped off by Candice LeRae, and of course, as they do completely covers his head and then takes the pin. Had taken a pretty good beating before that, even, but does end up getting the loss and taking the loss, and DIY getting the win there. So interesting bit there. So clearly, like I said, a good match, but clearly the story between them not quite done. So curious to see kind of where they go from there. I think you probably know better than I do, KP, but I think once they get the mask ripped off in public, they're not allowed to put back on. Or if they're actually seen, I'm not sure, because he did do a good job of covering his face and then the towel afterwards. So I'm curious if you can add some more light to that. But then we have the fourth and final match of the night, which is the last first round matchup of the Last Time Is Now tournament, this time with Finn Balor and Penta. Of course, this was a great match as well, continuing the trend for the evening. And yeah, two of the best here, putting on, doing what they do best. Penta does end up getting the win here in a clean contest, surprisingly enough. And Penta finally getting some momentum, and yeah, we'll see how far he can get in there. I think all the competitors left in the tournament have a pretty good claim to try to go on. So we'll have to see over the next couple of weeks who will be that final challenger for John Cena. And then the last part of SmackDown, kind of a segment of the opposite side of Raw, where we saw all the men. This time we end it with the women. We start off with the face team of Charlotte, Alexa Bliss, Io, and Rhea coming down. Then they throughout the night we saw a pretty interesting promo earlier, a vignette between Charlotte and Rhea, where they were kind of talking about their differences they've had in the past, but setting aside those differences for this particular moment. And both seem to be on board for that, or at least for now. And then they announced their final member of the women's face side, and that is, of course, AJ Lee. But as soon as they do that, or kind of almost at the same time, they are attacked by the four heel members, of course, being Lash Legend, Nia Jax, and the Kabuki Warriors. AJ Lee kind of pretending not to see, or maybe actually doesn't see, however you want to go about that. Kind of doing her intro stick there. As her team is getting beat down. She then notices, runs down to the ring, but then gets kind of caught on her way by Becky Lynch, who is then seen shaking Asuka's hand at the very end. So it does appear we do have AJ Lee on the face side and Becky Lynch on the heel side, and pretty much all but official there that our Survivor Series War Games teams are set on both the men's and the women's side. Some pretty stacked teams there. I think seeing Becky and Asuka on the same page, I thought was pretty cool, as was the kind of Rhea and Charlotte throughout the night. So yeah, KP, very, very action packed second half, as was the first. Curious to get your thoughts on all of that. Of course, DIY and Fraxium, Penta and Finn Balor. And now all but seems official, 5 versus 5 on the women's. How'd you like it?
Yeah, so I tried having a look through, especially with the Axiom situation, obviously with his mask being removed during the matchup here. And as far as I can tell, he's not a traditional Mexican luchador in the typical sense. And because this was done purely on an American standpoint here, apparently, I don't know if this is right, but I've just done a bit of research. Apparently, that he won't need to keep the mask off; he can put it back on. It doesn't have quite the same traditional aspect as the 100% authentic luchador. Well, Mexican luchadors do. So yeah, I don't know. That feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, if you can find anything to sort of dispute it. But as far as I can tell, after I don't know, a few minutes of searching around trying to find stuff, it doesn't look like he needs to keep it removed. So yeah, should see him back again on TV next week, and he should have it back on, whether it's going to be a different one, obviously with the different costumes, whatever, what different gear. But yeah, it was a fun match. I enjoyed the contest for what it was. Thought it was great. And then yeah, just definitely was very surprised by that sort of outcome in the end. I wasn't expecting the mask to be removed. They've made a couple of references to it in the past few weeks and whatever. But I didn't think they'd actually go through and do it. So especially for it to come on someone like Candice LeRae, obviously isn't even an in-ring superstar as well, and he just completely lost every single bit of his, I guess, fighting ability, wrestling ability. When he obviously had it removed, obviously he was more focused on not showing his face and stuff. So yeah, I mean, the match itself was fine, but yeah, the ending was kind of shocking. But I guess I quite enjoyed it, so I'm not going to complain. I thought it was decent, and yeah, just a surprising finish for sure. With Penta and Finn Balor, and that last time it was now tournament, I was, I guess, secretly deep down rooting for Finn Balor, but I didn't expect him to win whatsoever. I assumed Penta would win, so him getting the win is absolutely no surprise to me. I thought maybe they could have done JD McDonough coming on down to support Finn Balor, and maybe Ray Phoenix could have come down to help Penta at some point, because obviously we haven't seen them to actually have an interaction on WWE television yet. With Penta being primarily on Raw and Ray Phoenix being primarily on SmackDown, there hasn't been a chance for them to really sort of interact together. So I thought maybe they could have done something like that, but obviously they're choosing not to. Maybe that'll be sometime down the line, a little bit later. But the match itself between them two was quite good. I enjoyed it. But yeah, I think it is pretty much a standard expected result here. So Penta advances. I'm looking forward to his next matchup as well. But yeah, the last time in our tournament, that's the final of the first round matches. So now we're going to those second round ones. So starting to get into the bit more of the business end of this little tournament. So it could be quite exciting. And then yeah, with the main event, yeah, not really too much to add, compared to what you've already said here regarding this one. You basically just summarized it really, really well. Yeah, in terms of Becky and AJ being the last two women involved, no real surprises there. It seemed that Rhea was talking to AJ on Raw on Monday, so that was obviously quite logical. And then because of AJ Lee and Becky feuding at the moment, it makes sense to have Becky be the other person. So it just fits like a glove really in this situation, considering what the angle they've gone. And yeah, I guess now all War Games teams, men and women, have both been finalized to 5-5. So looking forward to seeing the women's War Games match, especially should be really, really fun. And yeah, there's a lot of big names in there, so quite a different vibe maybe from what I thought it might have been, about a month or two ago. But yeah, certainly interesting for sure. Looking forward to seeing how it all goes down. But the main event situation here, yeah, it just went pretty much as standard, and not a bad way to close the show. And we do see the team of heels standing tall at the end, which marks for a little bit of dominance at this early stage. So obviously we've got a week to go, and then obviously War Games will be around, but plenty of time for a little bit of back and forth between these 5 women. Well, between these 10 women, I should say. As for SmackDown as a general, though, thought it was okay. Thought it was good. I wouldn't say it was a classic or anything, but it was decent enough. There were some nice moments throughout the show. Ilya and McDonough. I thought Mello and Reed had a really good matchup. And then yeah, I thought that, I guess, Penta and Finn Balor had a decent contest as well. But yeah, there wasn't such a bad match here. They were all pretty decent as a minimum. But I wouldn't say anything special particularly happened. I give it a 7 out of 10. Quite, I guess, predictable in a lot of parts, but I wouldn't say it was necessarily bad because of that. So 7 out of 10 I think is fair for me. How did you rate this episode of SmackDown, Nick, in terms of everything that took place, and maybe predictability aside, perhaps? I don't know, maybe you want to include that in there as well. But yeah, I thought it was a decent episode. What about you?
Yeah, we seem to be a bit different on our opinions lately for these weekly shows, which is good. It makes for more interesting content, I think, in the long run. I thought this was a really, really good SmackDown. I think probably the best we've seen in a while. I know that is not saying a but, that's not saying a ton. SmackDown hasn't been exactly thriving as of late, but I thought this was the best episode I think I've seen in a while. 4 really good matches across the board, and then kind of finalizing those and or kind of increasing the drama between the men and the women's teams, with some pretty good promos in betweens. With that, SmackDown in the books, and we have a busier week this upcoming week. We also will be coming back with yet another, if we're being honest, episode on the Last Time Is Now tournament. We also have Raw, NXT, and SmackDown per usual, but we also have our Survivor Series, both predictions and reactions. So a busier week this week, as well as continuing our WrestleMania series. We are now on WrestleMania 22, so over halfway through that series. So I hope you're enjoying that as well. But for now, this has been the latest episode of The Push with Nick and KP. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care.